Hey everyone, it's your girl Smarty. And before we dive into today's journey, make sure to like and subscribe and welcome to Black Queen Dominion. Today's story isn't just about money or support. It's about power, resilience, and the kind of strength that makes the world notice when a queen refuses to bow. It all began in the last days of December, the final stretch of a year that had tested every ounce of my patience, courage, and determination. The world outside seemed to celebrate abundance, laughter, and connections, while inside my small apartment, the weight of isolation pressed against me like a relentless tide. I had $300 in my pocket, zero support, and the kind of skepticism from everyone around me that could crush even the most ambitious dreamers. Friends had disappeared when opportunities appeared, partners questioned my sanity, and society seemed eager to remind me that a woman alone, especially a Black woman, had to claw for every inch of recognition. But I wasn't going to let the world define me. I wasn't going to let their doubts dictate my worth. That $300 wasn't just money. It was the seed of my empire, the spark of a new year that I would claim for myself. While most people were busy celebrating in ways that required credit cards, connections, or approvals, I was planning, calculating, and strategizing. I could see the path that others couldn't. The path where risk wasn't something to fear, but an ally that would elevate me above every insult and every moment of betrayal. The first challenge was mindset. Survival alone with $300 required more than courage. It demanded clarity. I had to dismantle the fear, the anxiety, and the urge to compare myself to those who had seemingly endless resources. Comparison was a thief, and I refused to be robbed. Instead, I turned inward, digging into every skill I had honed over years of navigating a world that had never made space for me. Creativity, strategy, resilience, and an uncanny ability to identify opportunities disguised as obstacles became my tools. Each day I wrote plans, imagined outcomes, and visualized a future where my rule was unchallenged regardless of the odds. Money wasn't the only scarcity I faced. Support was non-existent. Calls for advice returned silence, and offers of help dissolved into excuses. The voices that had once cheered now whispered doubts, questioning the practicality of my ambitions. Some told me I was reckless, others insinuated failure was inevitable, and a few outright laughed at the audacity of trying to build an empire with almost nothing. But those laughs, those doubts, became fuel. They were reminders that the world often fears what it cannot control, and a Black queen who rises alone is a force it struggles to understand. With clarity established and mindset sharpened, I approached the next obstacle: opportunity. Every penny of my $300 had to stretch farther than anyone could imagine. I scoured the city, the digital marketplace, and every unconventional avenue I could access. While others relied on networks or inherited wealth, I relied on intuition, observation, and strategic risk. I discovered avenues where small investments created exponential results, markets where passion and ingenuity could outshine capital, and moments where timing was more valuable than money itself. As the new year approached, the tension between scarcity and possibility became my constant companion. Nights were long, filled with research, reflection, and meticulous planning. I watched others revel in abundance while I built silently, almost invisibly, the foundation of something larger than myself. Every setback became a lesson, every dismissal a motivator, every lonely moment a meditation. I realized that ruling, even with nothing but resolve, begins inside the mind. The queen's power isn't measured by currency. It's measured by vision, by audacity, and by the unwavering refusal to surrender. And then came the first test. An opportunity arose that could either elevate or bankrupt me. It was the kind of chance most people would ignore, too fearful to risk even their smallest resources. I weighed options, projected outcomes, and calculated the potential impact. That $300 had to act like $3,000, and I had to move like a strategist who already owned the game. Risk and reward danced in tandem, each heartbeat a reminder that a queen without support must trust herself above all. When I finally committed, the exhilaration was unparalleled. I wasn't just spending money, I was asserting sovereignty over my destiny. Time moved differently in those final days of December. Every second was a negotiation between fear and faith. While the city outside celebrated endings, I celebrated beginnings. I witnessed the quiet power of solitary determination. A woman underestimated even by herself at times, standing against a world that had never promised her victory. I realized that ruling wasn't about approval, applause, or recognition. It was about action, vision, and the courage to move when everyone else hesitated. By the eve of the new year, my $300 had multiplied in ways that seemed almost magical to those who had doubted me. The empire I envisioned wasn't just financial. It was a narrative shift, a declaration that a queen could rise from nothing, that Black womanhood carried unquantifiable power, and that resilience was the currency that mattered most. The silence that had haunted my days was replaced by the subtle hum of progress, a rhythm that told me I was on the right path, a path that no amount of ridicule could disrupt. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, I reflected on the journey that had begun in scarcity, isolation, and doubt. I had faced betrayal, scoffed at by those who should have supported me, and yet here I stood, proving that resourcefulness, strategy, and unwavering faith in oneself could defy every expectation. That $300 wasn't just money anymore. It was the first chapter of a story where I ruled not because the world had given me permission, but because I had claimed it. The new year dawned, and with it came the realization that triumph isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet, confident assertion that you are unshakable, unstoppable, and unbound by the limitations others try to impose. My empire was no longer just a dream. It was a reality beginning to unfold, built on the kind of strength that could not be borrowed, bought, or begged for. It was a testament to every Black queen who had been told she could not, would not, and should not rise. And with that realization, the stage was set for the next chapter of my ascent. The journey was far from over. Scarcity, doubt, and betrayal had been conquered in these first crucial steps, but the path ahead promised new challenges, greater stakes, and victories that would echo far beyond the limits of my apartment walls. I was ready, and the world would soon learn that a queen ruling with $300 and no support was not a woman to underestimate. The new year had barely begun, and the echoes of midnight fireworks still lingered in the city air, but my mind was already far ahead, focused on the empire I was determined to build. Chapter 1 had been about mindset, preparation, and proving to myself that $300 and no support could still ignite power. Now the real test began. The test that would separate wishful thinking from action, dreams from reality, and survival from true dominion. The first days of January brought new opportunities, but also new challenges. While others were recovering from celebrations or waiting for luck to find them, I was strategizing, investing time, energy, and the little cash I had with precision. Every dollar had to earn its weight in returns. Every move had to be calculated, deliberate, and relentless. I was no longer just surviving. I was asserting presence, making myself known in spaces where women like me were often dismissed, underestimated, or outright ignored. The initial hurdle came in the form of betrayal. Someone I had trusted, someone who had pretended to admire my vision, attempted to undercut me. They spread doubts about my capabilities, whispered lies, and sought to redirect opportunities toward themselves. It was the kind of deception that could break many people, but I had learned in December that strength isn't built on luck or favor. It's built on resolve. I observed quietly, letting their miscalculations and arrogance reveal their intentions, while I continued moving forward without hesitation. With betrayal as my silent motivator, I doubled down on resourcefulness. The $300 that had seemed insufficient a week ago became a symbol of ingenuity. I found creative ways to stretch every cent, reinvesting returns immediately, leveraging digital platforms for exposure, and using relationships strategically, even when those relationships carried no loyalty. Scarcity had forced me to innovate, and innovation became my weapon. I realized that empire building is less about the money you have and more about the moves you make when the world thinks you have nothing. The first tangible breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small opportunity arose, disguised as a simple side venture, something most people would have dismissed as inconsequential. But I saw potential where others saw risk. I put all my energy into it, crafting systems, streamlining operations, and ensuring that every step was precise. The hours were long, the work exhausting, but unlike anyone else celebrating the new year, I understood that success demanded sacrifice. Each small win built confidence, and every incremental gain proved that even with no backing, a queen could rule her domain. However, with growth came pressure. The city itself seemed to sense my ambition, as if the universe was testing whether my resolve could withstand scrutiny. Competitors emerged, some clever, some blatant in their attempts to copy my methods or undermine my progress. They didn't understand that ruling an empire built on grit and vision isn't about reacting to threats. It's about anticipating them, neutralizing them before they manifest, and continuing the ascent unshaken. I watched them struggle in ways I once had, silently knowing that experience was my shield, foresight my sword. Financial scarcity continued to be a looming reality. Every transaction, every investment had to be meticulously accounted for. A wrong move could erase progress. Yet the pressure became fuel rather than fear. I learned to negotiate fiercely, invest wisely, and pivot with agility. Even with a limited budget, I created momentum that rivaled those with far greater resources. My $300 no longer seemed small. It felt like a seed that had sprouted, resilient and unstoppable, reaching higher with every effort. But empire building isn't only about money or strategy. It's about presence. People notice a queen who refuses to be invisible, who walks into a room, digital or physical, and carries authority. I had to cultivate influence, command respect, and assert my place in spaces where Black women are often overlooked. It was a subtle, deliberate art, honed through observation, intelligence, and sheer audacity. Every interaction, every post, every opportunity to present myself was treated like a step in a chess game, with moves calculated far beyond the surface. The journey also demanded emotional resilience. Isolation, betrayal, and skepticism were constant companions. I had learned to transform loneliness into focus, doubt into motivation, and criticism into strategy. Each night, reflecting on progress, I reminded myself that empires are not built overnight. They are forged through endurance, intellect, and relentless ambition. The queen does not wait for permission or applause. She rules quietly, deliberately, and with unwavering confidence. Mid-January brought a moment that tested every lesson learned. A larger opportunity arose, one that required leveraging everything I had cultivated. It was risky, intimidating, and many would have called it impossible. But I recognized that the difference between failure and triumph is often the courage to act when fear is loudest. I invested all available resources, optimized every strategy, and executed with precision. The results were immediate and undeniable. Doors began to open, attention shifted, and momentum surged. Success, however, attracted scrutiny. People started noticing, some applauding quietly, others critiquing loudly. It was a reminder that ruling an empire, especially as a Black queen, draws envy and resistance. But I had already learned to navigate hostility with grace and strategy. I focused on growth, not distraction, building layers of resilience and influence that would withstand external pressure. In each challenge, I saw an opportunity to strengthen the foundations I had laid, ensuring that my ascent was sustainable and unstoppable. By the end of January, my empire was no longer theoretical. $300 and no support had evolved into a tangible presence, a proof that vision, tenacity, and strategy matter more than initial wealth. I had begun to understand a fundamental truth. Ruling is not about avoiding challenges but mastering them. The queen thrives not because the path is smooth, but because she moves through obstacles with unyielding determination. Looking back on the first month of the year, I realized that every betrayal, every moment of doubt, and every struggle had been a catalyst. They revealed who I was, tested what I was capable of, and prepared me for the larger battles ahead. Scarcity had been a teacher, skepticism a motivator, and solitude a proving ground. I had ruled the new year not with privilege or external support, but with strategy, courage, and an indomitable spirit. The stage was set for what would come next. The foundation was built, the first victories claimed, but the true test of dominion was only beginning. Competition would intensify, stakes would rise, and the empire I was building would demand even greater vision, focus, and audacity. Yet, armed with experience and unshakable confidence, I was prepared to expand, conquer, and continue proving that the Queen's power cannot be measured in dollars, approvals, or backing. It is measured in resilience, strategy, and vision. The momentum I had built in January was undeniable, but power always attracts attention. Some admiration, most envy. By February, it became clear that my ascent was being watched closely, and not everyone had my best interests at heart. Betrayal is subtle. It wears the face of familiarity, the mask of trust, and the whisper of opportunity. One of my closest associates, someone I had once considered an ally, began undermining my efforts in ways so calculated that it almost went unnoticed. Almost. This person had access to the inner workings of my fledgling empire. They knew my strategies, my financial limits, and the moments when I was most vulnerable. They sought to manipulate, to create doubt, and to redirect opportunities meant for me. At first, it was almost invisible. A delayed email, a miscommunicated detail, a minor obstacle that seemed trivial. But patterns emerged to those paying attention, and I noticed. The moment I did, I realized that ruling isn't just about action. It's about awareness. The queen sees, evaluates, and anticipates moves even before they are made. The sting of betrayal cut deep. Trust, once broken, is a luxury I could not afford to mourn over. Unlike those who crumble under deception, I transformed the betrayal into clarity. Every attempt to hinder me became evidence of my power, proof that my rise was worth fearing. I mapped every move my betrayer had made, retraced every decision, and used their overconfidence against them. While they assumed I was blind to their intentions, I was silently crafting the counterstrike that would not just neutralize the threat but elevate me further. February tested more than strategy, it tested patience. Patience is the hidden weapon of every queen. The world moves quickly, but dominance is not about speed alone. It is about timing. I watched, waited, and allowed my betrayer's arrogance to make their actions louder than they realized. Their mistakes multiplied, each one feeding my advantage. While they were busy trying to manipulate outcomes, I was quietly building influence, expanding my reach, and positioning myself to strike with precision. The queen's power is not reactionary. It is premeditated, intentional, and devastatingly effective. The first counterstrike was subtle, almost invisible to outsiders. I adjusted systems, secured crucial contacts, and reclaimed control over the areas my betrayer sought to exploit. It wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about dominion. Power must be maintained, boundaries enforced, and influence consolidated. Every move reinforced my sovereignty, proving that even in the face of sabotage, a queen with vision and determination cannot be undermined. The lesson was clear. No one can rule your empire but you. Financial growth, meanwhile, continued despite the turbulence. My $300 had now grown into a multi-layered operation, with returns that allowed reinvestment, experimentation, and strategic expansion. Each success was a statement, a demonstration that resilience, intellect, and audacity are worth far more than money alone. My empire was no longer invisible. It had a presence, a rhythm, and a momentum that drew attention from the right and the wrong people alike. While some tried to distract me with drama, I focused on results, knowing that visible action speaks louder than rumors or whispers. February also brought the challenge of external competition. As my influence spread, other ambitious individuals attempted to replicate my strategies or compete directly for the same opportunities. But imitation is never equal to origin. My advantage was insight honed over years of navigating a world that underestimated me at every turn. Every competitor, every rival became a reminder that ruling is not passive. It is active, demanding continuous innovation, foresight, and adaptation. I studied trends, analyzed markets, and anticipated shifts before anyone else realized they existed. The queen does not follow the crowd. She leads it, and the crown is reserved for those who move with vision. Mid-February, the counterstrike escalated. The betrayer attempted a more aggressive maneuver, targeting key partnerships and contacts I had painstakingly nurtured. This was the moment where strategy had to meet action. I confronted the challenge indirectly, strengthening relationships, clarifying intentions with allies, and subtly revealing my own capabilities. Each move was calculated to expose the betrayer's duplicity while reinforcing my authority. By the time their maneuver was visible to the public, it had already failed. Their credibility weakened, their influence diminished, and my own empire grew stronger in comparison. Emotionally, the experience was transformative. Betrayal often leaves scars, but it also illuminates strength. I learned that power is not simply about accumulation. It is about resilience, foresight, and the courage to act decisively when threatened. Each act of sabotage, each attempt to undermine me became a lesson in strategy, patience, and self-reliance. The queen who rises without support learns quickly that enemies are not only outside but often inside. Mastery over both ensures that no one can dictate the terms of her reign. By the end of February, the empire had not just survived, it had flourished. $300 had evolved into a network of influence, opportunities, and tangible results that confirmed one truth: ruling requires vision, not permission. My betrayer, once confident and bold, had been neutralized through strategy, intelligence, and restraint. The counterstrike was complete. And in that completion lay a larger revelation. The Queen's greatest weapon is not money, not support, but clarity of purpose and unshakable resolve. Looking ahead, the lessons of February became the foundation for March. The trials of betrayal, sabotage, and competition were not distractions. They were accelerants. Each challenge reinforced the reality that true power is forged in adversity, and the Queen who rules with intention cannot be shaken by envy, skepticism, or deceit. I understood more than ever that the journey was ongoing. Every month, every week, and every day demanded vigilance, courage, and unrelenting strategy. And as March approached, the stage was set for expansion, for taking control of opportunities that once seemed impossible, and for cementing influence in ways that would make my $300 origin story legendary. Betrayal had come, and the Queen had answered, not with impulsive anger but with precise, undeniable action. The empire was stronger, the crown more secure, and the message clearer than ever: underestimate a Black Queen at your own peril. March arrived with a sense of promise and opportunity. The lessons of betrayal, sabotage, and resilience from the past months had solidified a truth I'd carried like armor. Scarcity and doubt are temporary. Strategy, vision, and relentless action are permanent. The $300 that had once seemed laughable was no longer just a financial figure. It had become the seed of an empire, proof that a queen who refused to wait for support could still claim dominion over her destiny. Expansion was the focus now. While many would be content with surviving, I knew that ruling required growth. The empire I was building could not remain confined to small victories or incremental gains. It had to reach beyond what was expected, beyond what others believed possible. Every opportunity one had identified in January and refined in February now became a lever for influence. Each connection, each transaction, each meticulously calculated decision contributed to a network that was expanding at a pace that surprised even me. The first phase of expansion was operational. I restructured my initiatives, allocating resources strategically and optimizing processes to create efficiency without sacrificing impact. Every dollar of my remaining capital, every contact I had nurtured, and every bit of energy I invested was directed toward multiplying results. While others relied on luck, inherited wealth, or external validation, I relied on precision, ingenuity, and the ability to anticipate outcomes. The Queen rules not with chance, she rules with calculation. As the empire grew, so did visibility. More eyes watched my progress, some admiring quietly, others envious, and a few openly hostile. Yet visibility was a tool, not a threat. Influence is amplified when people notice your rise, even if they do so reluctantly. I leveraged attention strategically, showcasing capability, professionalism, and growth without pandering or exaggeration. In the world of empires, perception matters, but it is shaped by action, not words. My $300 origin story became a legend whispered in circles that once doubted me, a reminder that underestimated queens often rise in ways the world cannot anticipate. March was also a test of resilience on a larger scale. With expansion came complexity, competition, and increased scrutiny. The pressures that once seemed monumental now became manageable challenges because I had mastered adaptability. Every problem presented a new opportunity to demonstrate skill, intelligence, and creativity. While others were overwhelmed by obstacles, I transformed them into stepping stones. The queen who survives scarcity becomes unstoppable when opportunity aligns with preparation. Financially, the empire began to see tangible returns that exceeded my early expectations. The $300 had multiplied through disciplined reinvestment, clever partnerships, and high-leverage strategies. Small wins now turned into larger projects, modest gains evolved into significant influence, and what was once a solitary endeavor now involved a network of collaborators who respected my vision and authority. Success, I realized, was no longer measured by survival. It was measured by impact, expansion, and the ability to inspire others to follow a path defined by courage and ingenuity. Expansion, however, was not limited to finances or operations. It extended to influence, legacy, and identity. The empire was a reflection of my principles, my resilience, and my determination to redefine what a Black queen can achieve alone. I began to mentor others, strategically share insights, and position myself as a figure of inspiration. This was not about ego or recognition. It was about asserting that success built without support is not just survival. It is leadership, mastery, and dominion. The queen who rises alone carries the power to elevate others while securing her own throne. Amid this growth, I encountered new challenges. As influence expanded, so did expectations, both internal and external. There were moments when doubt resurfaced, questioning whether the pace of expansion could be sustained or whether unforeseen obstacles would derail progress. But I had learned that ruling is about consistency, endurance, and the ability to maintain focus when the stakes are highest. Fear was no longer a roadblock. It was a signal to sharpen strategy, double down on effort, and anticipate every outcome with precision. March also brought unforeseen opportunities that required bold action. Partnerships, collaborations, and ventures that seemed risky on the surface held immense potential for growth. Whereas most would hesitate, I seized them, leveraging insight, negotiation, and calculated risk to expand reach and revenue. The $300 that had once been all I had became a symbol of audacity, a reminder that true power does not wait for approval or perfect conditions. The queen creates conditions, she does not wait for them. By the end of March, the results were undeniable. My empire had grown in multiple dimensions, financially, operationally, and socially. The lessons of the past months, scarcity, betrayal, skepticism, and resilience, had culminated in an unmistakable triumph. I had transformed limitations into leverage, challenges into catalysts, and threats into opportunities. Every action reinforced the central truth. Ruling requires vision, strategy, and courage, not permission or support. Emotionally, the victory was profound. The growth of the empire affirmed that determination and intellect outmatch circumstance. Each small step, every strategic maneuver, and every risk taken with calculation reinforced the reality that the queen's power is not dependent on others. Scarcity, skepticism, and betrayal had all been conquered, leaving only clarity, focus, and the unshakable confidence that true dominion is self-made. March closed with a powerful realization. The empire was no longer fledgling. It was formidable. The $300 origin story had evolved into a narrative of triumph, resilience, and undeniable influence. My journey proved that Black queens do not require permission to rise, support to succeed, or luck to dominate. They require vision, strategy, and relentless action. And with these tools, they create empires that stand strong, even in the face of doubt, betrayal, and scarcity. The stage was now set for the final chapter. The lessons of expansion, the victories over betrayal, and the triumphs of resilience had prepared me for a crowning moment. An assertion of authority and mastery that would define the year, cement influence, and demonstrate that ruling is not just survival but sovereign triumph. The queen had grown, conquered, and claimed her throne, not through luck, money, or backing, but through the undeniable power of purpose, strategy, and relentless ambition. By April, the empire I had built with $300 and zero support had transformed into something extraordinary, a force that could not be ignored, replicated, or diminished. Every struggle, every betrayal, every sleepless night had culminated in a moment where vision met execution, resilience met opportunity, and determination met undeniable success. The queen had not only survived scarcity, skepticism, and sabotage, she had flourished beyond all expectations. The final chapter of this journey was about consolidation and legacy. Expansion had given me reach, visibility, and influence, but ruling required more than presence. It demanded mastery. I focused on securing every aspect of the empire: finances, operations, relationships, and reputation. Each connection was strengthened, every partnership reinforced, and every process optimized to ensure sustainability. The $300 that once seemed like a fleeting resource had evolved into a foundation strong enough to withstand scrutiny, competition, and even envy. Legacy was the next frontier. The queen who rises alone has the power not only to rule but to inspire. I began documenting the journey, capturing lessons learned, strategies employed, and the mindset required to ascend from nothing. This wasn't merely about creating a narrative for others to admire. It was about cementing proof that resilience, strategy, and vision are the true currencies of power. My story became a symbol, a testament to every Black woman told she couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't succeed without backing. April also brought moments of reflection. I looked back at the journey. The days of $300, the nights spent planning in silence, the betrayals that could have ended the dream, and the skepticism that once loomed like a shadow. Every obstacle had become a stepping stone. Every challenge had sharpened resolve. I realized that the Queen's power is forged in adversity. Without scarcity, doubt, and betrayal, the triumph wouldn't be nearly as profound. Every struggle became part of the crown I now wore with confidence. The empire itself had grown in visibility and influence. Financial returns had multiplied exponentially, partnerships flourished, and operations expanded into new avenues. The risk taken months earlier had transformed into opportunity realized. What once seemed impossible, the notion that $300 could spark a New Year's empire, had become a reality that left skeptics astonished and allies inspired. My progress demonstrated that ruling is not about waiting for perfect conditions. It is about creating them with courage, strategy, and relentless execution. Emotionally, this chapter was the most profound. Victory had a different texture now. It wasn't loud, flashy, or temporary. It was quiet, deep, and unwavering. It wasn't measured by applause, approval, or external validation. It was measured by mastery over circumstance, clarity of purpose, and the confidence of knowing that nothing could derail the path I had forged. The Queen had proven that resilience is more powerful than wealth, that vision is more valuable than connections, and that audacity outlasts doubt. The final test emerged as expected. With visibility and success came scrutiny, attempts to replicate, and indirect challenges from competitors and detractors. They hoped that the momentum would falter, that the crown would slip. But I had learned through months of adversity that mastery requires anticipation, vigilance, and precision. Every attempt to undermine me was anticipated, every strategy countered, every move executed with intent. The empire did not just survive challenges, it thrived because of them. April also brought the affirmation of influence beyond financial success. The empire's reach inspired others to act, innovate, and pursue their own visions. My story of $300, zero support, and unwavering determination became more than a personal triumph. It became a blueprint for resilience, a beacon for anyone who had been told they lacked resources, connections, or backing to succeed. Leadership, I realized, is measured not only by personal gain but by the capacity to elevate others while securing your own dominion. The culmination of this journey was undeniable. By the end of the month, the empire was stable, influence secured, and legacy established. Every obstacle overcome, every calculated risk taken, and every moment of perseverance had contributed to a reality that was more magnificent than I had envisioned. Scarcity had taught resourcefulness. Betrayal had taught discernment. Skepticism had taught confidence. And through it all, the Queen had emerged triumphant, unshaken, and sovereign. Looking forward, the path was no longer about proving survival. It was about mastering influence, consolidating power, and sustaining the impact of what had been achieved. The new year, which began as a test of what $300 and determination could accomplish, had become a narrative of triumph, mastery, and the assertion that the Queen's power is priceless. The world had watched, some in disbelief, others in admiration, but none could deny the reality. A Black Queen who rises without support is unstoppable, unstoppable in vision, unstoppable in action, and unstoppable in legacy. And as the months continued, the empire continued to expand, not just financially but socially, strategically, and culturally. Lessons learned were codified, systems strengthened, and influence amplified. Opportunities that once seemed unattainable became routine victories. The crown, forged in adversity, was now fully secured, a symbol of unshakable authority, mastery, and the transformative power of relentless ambition. In conclusion, this journey was never about money, external support, or validation. It was about vision, strategy, courage, and the unwavering refusal to be limited by circumstance. $300 had sparked the empire, zero support had strengthened the Queen's resolve, and the trials of the new year had created an unshakable legacy. Every Black Queen, every ambitious woman who had been told she couldn't, wouldn't, or shouldn't, could look at this story and see proof that sovereignty begins within, grows through strategy, and reigns through determination. The empire was no longer a dream, it was a reality, an influence, and a legacy. The crown had been claimed, not by chance or favor, but by audacity, foresight, and relentless action. And as the new year unfolded fully, it was clear that the queen had ruled, not only surviving against the odds but mastering every challenge to secure triumph, dominance, and legacy that no one could take away.